Welcome. Take a moment to settle yourself. Adjust your pillow if you need to. Let your shoulders drop away from your ears. Release the tension you have been carrying in your neck, in the small of your back. The day is done. Its concerns, its urgencies, its demands. All of these can wait until tomorrow. For now, there is only this quiet moment and the story we are about to share. Tonight, we journey to a place that exists almost entirely outside of time. Not in the sense that it is eternal, though in some ways it is, but in the sense that time moves differently there. Days are measured not by clocks, but by bells, by the angle of the sun, by the opening of flowers and the ripening of fruit. Seasons flow into one another, without the hard edges we impose on them with our calendars. There is simply the slow turning of the year, the patient unfolding of natural processes, the gentle rhythm of work that is also prayer. We are going to a monastery garden. Not just any monastery garden, but one specific garden in the year 1320, in the soft countryside of southern England. It is autumn now, in that world. November to be precise. But we will not stay in November. We will follow this garden through an entire year, watching it transform from the sleeping darkness of winter, through spring's tentative awakening, into summer's explosive abundance, and back again to autumn's quiet preparation for rest. This will be a slow story. There are no battles here, no intrigue, no drama. There is only work, repeated day after day, season after season. The work of growing food, the work of cultivating healing plants, the work of cooperating with the earth, with weather, with the patient intelligence of plants that know how to grow if given half a chance. Our guide through this journey is Brother Thomas. He is 43 years old, though age sits lightly on him in some ways, heavily in others. His face is weathered from years of outdoor work, lines creasing around his eyes and mouth. His hands are calloused, the nails permanently stained with earth. His back aches most mornings, a reminder of decades spent bending to the soil. But his eyes are clear and observant, missing nothing. And his movements, though economical, are sure. He knows exactly what he is doing. Brother Thomas has been a monk since he was 12 years old. That is 31 years of this life. 31 years of rising before dawn for prayers, and 31 years of silence during most of the day. 31 years of simple food, simple clothing, simple shelter. And for the last 15 of those years, he has been the monastery's gardener, the hortulanus, as the position is formally called, the one responsible for the gardens that feed the community and provide medicine for the sick. He did not ask for this work. In a monastery, one does not choose one's labor. One is assigned. But when the previous gardener, Brother Augustine, died after a long illness, the abbot called Brother Thomas to his study and said simply, "You will tend the gardens now." Brother Augustine spoke well of your careful attention to detail. The earth will teach you what you need to know. And it has. Oh, how it has. Brother Thomas knew nothing of gardening when he began. He was terrified of failing, of letting the community starve through his ignorance. But Brother Augustine, in his final months, worked alongside him in the garden, teaching him slowly, patiently, how to read the soil, how to time plantings, How to recognize the difference between a weed seedling and a vegetable seedling when both are barely visible threads of green. How to prune without fear. How to compost. How to water. How to wait. That last lesson was perhaps the most important. How to wait. Plants cannot be rushed. A seed germinates in its own time, not yours. A fruit ripens when it is ready, not when you are impatient for it. The garden operates on its own schedule, set by the sun and the seasons, and the gardener can only cooperate with that schedule, not command it. Brother Thomas learned this the hard way, in his first spring as gardener. He planted everything too early, eager to see growth, to prove himself capable. A late frost killed half his seedlings. He planted too thickly, not trusting that the tiny seeds would actually grow, and spent weeks thinning overcrowded plants. He harvested too late, and vegetables went to seed before he could use them. That first year was a catalogue of small failures. But the garden forgave him, because the garden always forgives, if you are willing to learn. The next year he did better, and the year after that, better still. And now, 15 years later, he moves through the seasons with a confidence born of experience. He knows this garden intimately. He knows which beds drain quickly and which hold water. He knows which walls provide warmth for tender plants and which corners stay cold and shaded. He knows when to plant, when to harvest, when to simply leave things alone. The monastery itself is a Cistercian house dedicated to St. Mary. There are 40 monks in the residence, plus a handful of lay brothers who handle much of the physical labor. The monastery sits in a gentle valley with fields stretching out in all directions. The monks grow grain in those fields and keep sheep for wool and tend orchards of apples and pears. But the garden is different. The garden is intensive. It is a place of concentrated cultivation, where every square foot is used, where nothing is wasted, where careful attention yields abundance. The garden measures approximately 2 acres, though Brother Thomas has never measured it exactly. It is enclosed by stone walls on 3 sides and a wooden fence on the 4th. The walls are perhaps 8 feet tall, thick and solid, and built decades ago by monks whose names are now forgotten. These walls serve multiple purposes. They keep out deer and rabbits. They provide shelter from harsh winds. And most importantly, they absorb heat from the sun during the day and radiate it back at night, creating a microclimate several degrees warmer than the surrounding countryside. Against these walls, Brother Thomas trains fruit trees in careful patterns, taking advantage of every bit of warmth the stone provides. The garden is divided into beds, 18 of them, each measuring roughly 12 feet by 4 feet. Between the beds run gravel paths, wide enough for a wheelbarrow, but narrow enough to maximize growing space. At one end of the garden stands a small stone shed where tools are kept. Beside it are the compost bins, 3 large wooden structures where organic matter slowly transforms into the black gold that feeds the soil. Behind the shed is a small greenhouse, or what passes for a greenhouse in 1320. A wooden frame covered with oiled linen, creating a protected space for starting seedlings. There is a well in one corner of the garden, its water cool and sweet and essential. Without this water, the garden would be at the mercy of rainfall, which in England is usually adequate, but not always. The well is perhaps 20 feet deep, lined with stone, its bucket and rope kept in good repair. Drawing water from this well, day after day through the dry months, is one of the hardest parts of Brother Thomas's work. But it is also one of the most necessary. Near the garden's south wall grows the herb garden, a special area dedicated to medicinal and culinary plants. Here grow rosemary and sage, thyme and mint, lavender and chamomile, feverfew and valerian, and a dozen other plants whose leaves and flowers and roots are used to heal and to flavor food. The monastery's infirmarian depends on this herb garden, and Brother Thomas tends it with special care. A sick monk needs medicine, and that medicine must be available when needed. Not someday or maybe, but now. The garden's soil is good. It has been worked for over a century, composted and enriched year after year, and it shows. The earth is dark and crumbly, rich with organic matter. It smells clean and alive. That distinctive scent of healthy soil that is hard to describe, but unmistakable once you know it. Earthworms are abundant, their castings visible on the surface after rain. This is excellent soil, and Brother Thomas maintains it carefully, knowing that everything depends on its health. So this is our setting. A 2-acre garden, enclosed by walls, divided into ordered beds, tended by one careful monk who rises before dawn and works until dusk, day after day, season after season. This is where we will spend the next hours, walking these paths, observing these plants, learning the slow rhythms of cultivation and harvest and rest. The year we will follow is unremarkable. There are no disasters this year, no killing frosts in May, no drought in July, no early snows in October. Just an ordinary year with ordinary challenges and ordinary rewards, which is to say, a year of quiet miracles, seeds that germinate, plants that grow, fruits that ripen, food that appears reliably and abundantly from the earth. If you listen carefully, you can almost hear it. The silence of the medieval garden at dusk. No machinery, no traffic, no electronic hum. Just the wind in the leaves. The distant sound of bells calling monks to prayer. The rustle of a robin in the undergrowth. And beneath all of that, if you are very quiet and very attentive, the sound of growing, because plants do make sound as they grow, though it is far too subtle for human ears. But perhaps we can imagine it anyway. The whisper of roots pushing through soil, the soft creak of stems elongating, the tiny rustle of leaves unfurling. So settle yourself. Let your breathing slow and deepen. Let the modern world fade away. And come with us now to the garden, to the patient work, to the turning seasons, to the place where time moves differently, where the measure of a day is not hours, but tasks completed, where success is measured not in profit, but in full storage cellars and healthy monks, and the continuation of the ancient cycle of planting and harvest. We begin in January, in the cold, in the dark, in the dormant garden where nothing appears to be happening, but where, beneath the surface, everything is preparing. The bell for vigil sounds in the darkness. It is a single bell, not large, but its tone carries through the cold night air, reaching into the dormitory where 40 monks sleep on their simple pallets. Brother Thomas wakes immediately. He has been waking to this bell for 31 years. His body knows it before his mind does. He sits up carefully. The dormitory is utterly dark. There are no windows here, and no candles are lit until after the bell sounds. He knows where his habit hangs, though he cannot see it. His hands find the rough wool by memory. He pulls it over his head, the fabric cold against his skin. His feet find his sandals. Around him, other monks are doing the same, moving quietly, carefully, in the darkness. The walk to the chapel takes them through the cloister, the covered walkway that surrounds the monastery's central courtyard. Here, the cold is intense. Brother Thomas can see his breath now, illuminated by the few candles that have been lit to guide their way. His breath comes in small clouds that dissipate quickly in the freezing air. The stone beneath his feet is like ice, and he is grateful for his sandals, thin as they are. In the chapel, the monks file into their places in the choir stalls. The candles cast long shadows. Brother Thomas takes his place and waits. And then the singing begins. The office of vigils, the first prayer of the day, sung in the deep middle of the night. The Latin words rise in the cold air, echoing off stone walls. Psalms that have been sung here every night for over 100 years. Psalms that will be sung here for hundreds bonte. Brother Thomas sings, but part of his mind is already in the garden. This is always true, even in prayer, especially in the winter when the garden seems most distant. He is thinking about it, wondering if the frost has been hard, whether the kale will need checking, whether the cold frame's cover held through the night wind he heard before falling asleep. After vigils, there is a brief period before Lauds, the dawn prayer. Most monks return to the dormitory, trying to steal another hour of sleep in the pre-dawn darkness. But Brother Thomas goes to the warming room. This is the only heated common space in the monastery, aside from the kitchen and the infirmary. A brazier burns here constantly through the winter months, fed with charcoal, providing blessed warmth. He sits before the brazier tied, holding his hands out to it. Other monks are here too, silent, warming themselves. The rule of silence is in force. No one speaks. But there is a companionship in the shared warmth, in the shared cold they have just endured and will endure again when they leave this room. Brother Thomas flexes his fingers, watching them in the dim light. These hands will need to work today, despite the cold. There is always work, even in January. He inspects his palms, seeing the calluses he has earned over 15 years of garden labor. Thick patches where the hoe handle rests. Roughened fingertips from pulling weeds and handling rough stems. These are working hands. They are not beautiful, but they are useful. They are good hands. When the bell sounds for Lauds, he makes his way back to the chapel. Dawn is just beginning, a faint lightening in the east visible through the chapel's narrow windows. The monks sing the office as the world slowly brightens. By the time they finish, there is enough light to see clearly, though the sun has not yet risen. After Lauds comes the morning chapter meeting, where the abbot reads from the rule and sometimes addresses practical matters. Then, finally, breakfast in the refectory, a simple meal, bread and ale. Sometimes porridge. The food is plain but adequate, and Brother Thomas eats gratefully. He will need this energy for the work ahead. And then, at last, he is free to go to the garden. The walk from the monastery buildings to the garden is short, perhaps 200 paces. The path is gravel, well maintained. Brother Thomas walks it slowly, observing as he goes. The sky is clearing, he notes. No clouds. That means it will be a cold day, but a clear one. good for some kinds of work, challenging for others. He reaches the garden gate and lifts the latch. The gate, heavy oak bound with iron, swings open with a familiar creak. He steps through and closes it carefully behind him. And then he simply stands for a moment, looking. The January garden is a study in muted colors. Browns and grays dominate. The beds that are not covered with mulch show bare earth, dark and frozen. The beds that are mulched show the pale gold of straw, laid thick to protect the soil. The paths are grey gravel, precisely raked. The walls are weathered stone, their mortar darkened by years of rain. And above all this, the sky is a pale cold blue, the colour of ice. But there is life here, if you know where to look. Brother Thomas walks the paths slowly, observing with eyes trained by 15 years of attention. In the winter vegetable bed, the kale stands strong. Its leaves are deep blue-green, crinkled and curved, coated with a thin layer of frost that will melt as the sun rises. These plants are survivors. They have weathered every frost this winter has thrown at them, and they will weather more. Kale actually becomes sweeter after frost, the cold converting some of its starches to sugars. Next to the kale grow the leeks. Their green tops emerge from the soil like small fountains. Each plant a tight bundle of leaves surrounding the white shaft that will eventually be harvested. Leeks, too, are unbothered by cold. They sit quietly in their rows, growing imperceptibly slowly in the winter chill, but growing nonetheless. Brother Thomas has learned to appreciate leeks. They are not flashy. They do not produce abundantly, but they are reliable, available through the entire winter when almost nothing else is. The cabbages are different. These are late cabbages planted in July, and they are only now forming their heads. Each plant is a rosette of blue-green leaves, the outer leaves spreading wide, the inner leaves beginning to curve inward and wrap around themselves. In another month, perhaps 2, these will be solid heads, firm and heavy. But for now, they are in that in-between stage, committed to becoming cabbages, but not quite there yet. Brother Thomas walks on, checking each bed in turn. Most are empty, their soil hidden beneath mulch or cover crops. The cover crops are young plants of rye or field beans, sown in October, now ankle-high and dormant. They will not grow much through the winter, but their roots are working, holding the soil, preventing erosion. In spring, Brother Thomas will dig them in, and they will decompose, adding nitrogen and organic matter. But that is months away. The herb garden is mostly dormant. The perennial herbs have died back, their visible growth gone, only their roots alive beneath the soil. But some persist. The rosemary is woody and evergreen, its needle-like leaves grey-green even in winter. Brother Thomas brushes his hand against it as he passes, and the scent rises immediately, sharp and resinous. Rosemary is a gift in winter. It provides flavor when almost nothing else is available. The monastery's cook uses it liberally in the winter pottage, the daily vegetable stew that is the staple of their diet. Sage too persists, though its leaves are duller now, less vibrant than in summer. Bay laurel, trained against the south wall, has been wrapped in sacking to protect it from the hardest frosts. This plant is precious. It came as a gift from another monastery 10 years ago, a small cutting that Brother Thomas coaxed into growth. Now it is nearly 6 feet tall, and its leaves are essential in the kitchen. The fruit trees along the walls are bare. Their branches make intricate patterns against the stone, dark wood against grey rock. Brother Thomas examines them carefully as he walks past. He is looking for problems. Broken branches, signs of disease, damage from ice or wind. The espalier trees, trained flat against the walls in careful patterns, need constant attention. Every branch must be in its proper place. Any that grow outward from the wall must be removed. Any that cross other branches must be removed. The goal is a two-dimensional tree, a living diagram that produces maximum fruit in minimum space. He sees one branch on an apple tree that has come loose from its wire. The wind, probably. He makes a mental note to repair it today. This is the kind of small task that fills winter days. Not urgent, but necessary. If left unattended, the branch will grow in the wrong direction, ruining the tree's shape. His tour of the garden complete, Brother Thomas returns to the toolshed. This is a small stone building, perhaps 8 feet square, with a door that fits poorly and lets in drafts. Inside, hung on pegs driven into the mortar between stones, are his tools. Spades and forks for digging, hoes for weeding, rakes for smoothing soil and gathering leaves, pruning knives and saws, dibbers for making planting holes, trowels for delicate work. Each tool has its place, and each is hung there carefully after use. Today, Brother Thomas selects a pruning knife and a small saw. It is time to begin the winter pruning. This is one of the major tasks of January and February. The fruit trees must be pruned while dormant before the sap begins to rise in spring. Pruning at the wrong time can weaken a tree, cause excessive sap flow, or remove the wood that would have borne fruit. But winter pruning done correctly strengthens the tree and increases fruit production. He also takes a coil of soft wire and a cloth for tying. The loose branch will need to be secured. And he takes a whetstone from the shelf. Before beginning any pruning, the tools must be sharp. A sharp blade makes clean cuts that heal quickly. A dull blade crushes and tears, leaving ragged wounds where disease can enter. He sits on the stone step outside the toolshed and sharpens the pruning knife. The stone is worn smooth from years of use. He spits on it to provide lubrication, then draws the blade across it in long, even strokes. The sound is rhythmic, almost musical. Scrape, scrape, scrape. He works both sides of the blade, holding it at the proper angle, a skill that took him months to learn when he first became gardener. When the blade is sharp enough to shave a hair from his arm, which he tests and confirms, he stands and walks to the apple trees. The sun is above the horizon now, though still low. The frost on the kale is melting, water droplets catching the light. It is going to be a beautiful day. Cold but clear. A good day for careful work. Brother Thomas stands before the first apple tree and simply looks at it. This is essential. Never rush to cut. First, observe. Understand the tree's structure. See where it wants to grow. See where last year's growth occurred. See which branches bore fruit and which did not. A tree is not a static thing. It is constantly changing, constantly growing. The pruner's job is to guide that growth, to shape it, to encourage the tree toward its best form. He sees what needs to be done. Several small branches growing directly upward from horizontal limbs. These are called water sprouts, and they must be removed. They will never bear fruit. They only drain the tree's energy. He also sees some crossing branches, places where two limbs rub against each other. One of each pair must go. And there is some dead wood, easy to identify because it lacks the slight suppleness of living wood. He begins to cut. Each cut is deliberate. Each is made at the proper angle, slanting away from the trunk so water will shed off rather than pooling. Each is made just above a bud, close enough that the wound will heal over quickly, but not so close that the bud is damaged. This precision matters. Every cut shapes the tree's future. The work is slow. It is meditative. His hands know what to do. His mind grows quiet. There is only this: the tree, the blade, the careful attention to what needs to be removed and what needs to stay. Branches fall to the ground, and with each cut, the tree's structure becomes clearer, more intentional. An hour passes, perhaps more. Time moves strangely in the winter garden. The sun climbs but provides little warmth. Brother Thomas's fingers grow stiff with cold, but he continues. He will warm them later, in the midday warming room. For now, there is this work, and it requires his full attention. The bell for terce sounds from the monastery, calling the monks to mid-morning prayer. Brother Thomas sets down his tools carefully, laying them on the ground where he can find them again, and walks back to the chapel. This is the rhythm of his days. Work, prayer, work, prayer, work. The two intertwine, indistinguishable. The pruning is prayer. The prayer prepares him for pruning. There is no separation. After terce, he returns to the garden. The day is warmer now, relatively speaking, perhaps just above freezing. He continues his pruning, moving from tree to tree, spending an hour or more on each one. The work is exacting but satisfying. With each branch removed, the tree is better, stronger, more productive. This is the work of winter, preparation, setting the stage for abundance that will come in warmer months. By midday, he has finished 3 trees. There are 15 more to go. This work will take weeks. But there is no hurry. The trees will wait. And Brother Thomas knows that patience is essential. Better to prune slowly and carefully than quickly and carelessly. Better to take the time to do it right. He returns to the monastery for the midday meal. His body is tired. His hands cold. But there is satisfaction in the tiredness. It is the exhaustion of good work, purposeful work. He eats his simple meal gratefully, and then returns to the garden for the afternoon's labor. This is January, the frozen month, the quiet month, the month when the garden sleeps, and the gardener prepares. And in this preparation, in this patient attention to small tasks that will matter greatly in months to come, there is a kind of peace, brightness. This is what needs doing. And he is doing it. What more could be asked? Chapter 2, February. Preparing the ground, 1900 words. February arrives with little fanfare. The days are still cold, still short, but perceptibly longer than they were in January. The sun, though still weak, climbs a bit higher in the sky each day. To Brother Thomas, attuned to these subtle shifts after years of observation, the change is obvious and encouraging. The year is turning. Spring is still far away, but it is no longer impossible to imagine. The character of the work changes in February. January was about pruning, about shaping the trees for the year ahead. February is about the soil, about preparing the beds that will receive this year's crops, about building the foundation for abundance that will come later. If January was precision work with sharp blades, February is heavy labor with spades and forks. The task is composting, or more accurately, the application of compost. The compost itself has been building for over a year, layer upon layer in the 3 wooden bins behind the toolshed. Kitchen scraps from the refectory. Weeds pulled from the beds all summer. Straw from the stables mixed with manure. Fallen leaves from the orchard. Prunings from the winter work, chopped small. All of this has been piled, watered when dry, turned occasionally and left to decompose. The transformation is remarkable. What was garbage, potato peelings and cabbage leaves and grass clippings, has become something entirely different. Brother Thomas opens the lid of the oldest bin and looks inside. The material is dark, almost black. It is crumbly and pleasant smelling, like forest floor. Individual components are no longer recognizable. Everything has broken down, merged, become something new. This is compost. This is the gardener's gold. Brother Thomas takes his spading fork and begins to loosen the compost, pulling it from the bin and placing it in the wooden wheelbarrow. The barrow is old, its wheels slightly wobbly, but it still serves. He fills it carefully, not too full, or it will be too heavy to push. When it is properly loaded, he grasps the handles and lifts. The weight settles onto the wheel. He pushes, and the barrow moves forward with a creaking complaint. The path from compost bins to garden beds is not long, but with a heavy barrow it feels longer. Brother Thomas pushes steadily, not rushing. Rushing invites mistakes. A spilled barrow means work redone. So he moves at his own pace. The pace that experience has taught him is sustainable. He reaches the first bed, one that held beans last summer. The bed is bare now, the bean plants long since pulled and composted. The soil is visible, grey-brown and dormant. Brother Thomas tips the barrow carefully, and the compost tumbles out in a dark mound. He takes his rake and spreads it evenly across the bed, creating a layer perhaps 2 inches thick. The dark compost contrasts sharply with the paler soil beneath. Then he returns to the bins for another load. And another. And another. This is the rhythm of February. Fill the barrow. Push it to a bed. Spread the compost. Return for more. Hour after hour. Day after day. It is hard work. The barrow is heavy. His shoulders ache by mid-morning. His back protests by afternoon. But Brother Thomas has learned to work with his body, not against it. He lifts with his legs, not his back. He takes breaks when needed, standing straight and stretching, hands pressed to his lower spine. He paces himself, knowing that this work will take weeks, and trying to do it all in one frantic push would only injure him. The weather cooperates, mostly. Some days are dry and cold, perfect for this work. The ground is firm enough to support the wheelbarrow. The compost spreads easily. Other days bring rain. Cold February rain that soaks through his habit and makes the paths muddy. On these days, he works anyway, unless the rain is truly torrential. A little rain is no reason to stop. The monks do not have the luxury of working only when conditions are perfect. But rain does make the work harder. The barrow wheels stick in mud. His feet slip on the wet gravel paths. The compost becomes heavier. waterlogged. Still, he persists. Load after load, bed after bed. The dark compost spreads across the garden like a blessing. As he works, Brother Thomas thinks about the year ahead. This is one of the pleasures of repetitive physical labor. The body works, but the mind is free to wander. He plans his plantings. This bed will be for onions and leeks. That one for carrots and beets. This bed for the climbing beans. That one for the cabbages and kale. Each bed has been chosen carefully, based on what grew there last year and what grew there the year before. He practices rotation, never growing the same family of plants in the same bed 2 years running. This reduces disease and pest problems and prevents the soil from being depleted of specific nutrients. He also thinks about what to try that is new this year. Every year, he experiments with something. A new variety of bean, perhaps. A different way of training the squash plants. Maybe this year he will try starting some of the cabbages even earlier, in late winter, to see if they can be harvested before the summer heat makes them bolt. Experimentation is how knowledge accumulates. Brother Augustine taught him this. Try new things. Observe carefully. Remember what worked and what failed. Each year's experience informs the next year's decisions. Between barrow loads, he also tends to other tasks. The tool handles that worked loose in winter's cold and damp are brought to the carpenter for repair. Brother Thomas watches as the carpenter heats the metal ferrules over a small fire, then hammers them tight onto the wood. Good tools are expensive. They must be maintained. A broken handle can be repaired for the cost of some time and a bit of skill. A completely ruined tool must be replaced, which requires money the monastery can ill afford to spend. He also sharpens blades. This is ongoing work, never really finished. The hoes and spades that will be used for digging in another month must be ready. Brother Thomas sits outside the tool shed on a rare sunny afternoon with his whetstone and works through each tool. The sound of metal on stone is rhythmic and pleasant. With each blade, he tests the edge against his thumb, feeling for that slight bite that indicates sharpness. When satisfied, he hangs the tool back in its place. The seed inventory also demands attention. The monastery keeps its seed stock in sealed pottery jars, stored in a cool, dry room off the granary. In February, Brother Thomas brings these jars to the tool shed and empties them carefully onto a clean cloth. He sorts through each type of seed, discarding any that look damaged or diseased. Beans should be smooth and intact, with no holes from insects. Pea seeds should be wrinkled but whole. Carrot and lettuce seeds, tiny as they are, should be plump, not shriveled. He also tests germination. He takes a small sample of each seed type, 10 beans, 20 lettuce seeds, and places them between layers of damp cloth. He sets these aside in a corner of the tool shed where they will stay moist, but not too cold. After a week, he checks them. How many germinated? If all 10 beans sprouted, the seed stock is good. If only 5 sprouted, he knows that seed is losing viability, and he will need to plant more thickly to compensate or acquire fresh seed from another monastery. This testing is essential. There is nothing worse than planting an entire bed with seed that will not germinate, then waiting weeks to discover the failure. Better to know now, while there is time to obtain replacement seed if needed. On one particularly cold morning, Brother Thomas wakes to find the garden dusted with snow. Not a heavy snow, just an inch or so, but enough to transform the landscape. The beds that were dark with spread compost are now uniformly white. The paths disappear. The whole garden is a study in black and white. The dark branches of the fruit trees stark against the snow-covered ground and the white sky. Brother Thomas stands at the garden gate, simply looking. There is a beauty in this stark simplicity, a silence. The snow muffles all sound. Even the ever-present wind is stilled. It is as if the garden is holding its breath, waiting. But the snow will not last. The temperature is just above freezing, and by midday, the snow is melting, revealing the compost dark beds beneath. The brief winter beauty gives way to the usual grey and brown of February. Brother Thomas returns to his work. By the middle of February, half the beds have received their compost. The difference is visible. The treated beds are noticeably darker, richer looking. The untreated beds still wait, patient. Brother Thomas will reach them soon. There is time. The planting will not begin for several more weeks. Everything happens in its proper season, and forcing things is usually counterproductive. He also begins checking the soil more carefully now, assessing its readiness for digging. Each morning he goes to a different bed and pushes his spade into the earth. How does it feel? Is the ground still frozen solid? Is it softening? In late January, the spade barely penetrated. The ground was iron hard. By early February, the spade goes in a few inches before meeting resistance. Now, in mid-February, the spade sinks almost its full depth. The ground is thawing. Soon it will be ready to work. But not yet. Working soil, when it is too wet, destroys its structure. The delicate aggregates of soil particles, the tiny pores that hold air and water, get smashed and compacted. The soil becomes dense and hard, difficult for roots to penetrate. Brother Thomas knows this from experience and from reading the monastery's old gardening texts. There is a right time for everything. And knowing when that time has arrived is perhaps the most important skill a gardener can possess. He tests the soil the way Brother Augustine taught him, the way gardeners have tested soil for centuries. He takes a handful of earth and squeezes it in his fist. When he opens his hand, the soil should hold together briefly, then crumble when he touches it with a finger. If it stays in a compacted ball, it is too wet. If it will not hold together at all, it is too dry. But that perfect moment when it just barely holds together, then crumbles. That is when the soil is ready. By the 3rd week of February, most beds pass this test. The compost has been spread. The tools have been sharpened. The seeds have been tested. Everything is prepared. Brother Thomas stands in the garden one evening after Vespers, after the prayers that mark the end of the day's work. The sun is setting earlier than it did in January, but later than it did in December. The light is golden, slanting across the garden, catching the bare branches of the fruit trees and making them glow. He is tired. His body aches from weeks of heavy labor. But it is a good ache, the ache of work accomplished. The beds are ready. Spring is coming. And when it arrives, he will be prepared. This is February, the month of preparation, the month of patient labor that sets the stage for everything that follows. It is not glamorous work. No one will see the compost he has spread once it is dug into the soil. No one will know the effort that went into sharpening every blade and testing every seed. But Brother Thomas knows, and he knows that this work matters, that it is the foundation on which the entire year's harvest will rest. He bows his head briefly in prayer, giving thanks for the strength to do this work, for the compost that will feed the soil, for the seeds that will become food. Then he turns and walks back to the monastery. Tomorrow, the work will continue, but tonight, he will rest. March arrives with promise and uncertainty in equal measure. Some days feel almost spring-like, with pale sunshine that carries a hint of actual warmth. The wind shifts, coming from the south rather than the north, bringing with it the suggestion of gentler weather to come. Birds begin to sing again, their voices breaking the winter silence. Brother Thomas notices all of this, reading the signs as he has learned to do. But other days, winter returns with a vengeance. Cold rain falls steadily through grey afternoons. Wind howls from the north, bitter and biting. Even snow is not impossible in early March. This is the treacherous season, the month that promises spring but cannot quite deliver it. Brother Thomas knows not to trust March's warm moments. He has been deceived before. In his early years as gardener, planting too early only to watch frost kill his seedlings. Patience. Always patience. This is March's lesson. But by the middle of the month, the soil is ready. Brother Thomas knows this without even testing it. He can see it in the way the earth looks, the way it smells. There is a liveliness that was absent in February. The soil is waking up just as the plants will wake when given the chance. The time has come for digging. This is heavy work, perhaps the heaviest work of the entire year. Each bed must be dug, not just loosened but properly turned. The compost that was spread in February now works deep into the soil. Brother Thomas begins with the bed nearest the tool shed, both as a matter of convenience and as a matter of tradition. This is the bed where he always begins. Brother Augustine began here. The gardener before Augustine began here. Sometimes tradition has no reason beyond itself, but that does not make it any less important. He positions himself at the end of the bed, his spade in hand. The handle is smooth from years of use, shaped to his grip. He sets the blade against the soil and pushes down with his foot, using his weight to drive the spade deep. The earth resists, then yields. The blade sinks in almost to the hilt. He pulls back on the handle, leveraging the spade, and a mass of soil lifts. He turns this soil over, inverting it so what was on top is now on the bottom and what was beneath is now exposed. The compost that was spread on the surface in February now disappears into the depths. The pale soil from below comes to the top, fresh and ready. He shakes the spade slightly as he turns the earth, breaking up clods, letting the soil fall back with a satisfying thump. Then he steps back and does it again. And again. The rhythm establishes itself. Dig. Turn. Shake. Step back. Dig. Turn. Shake. Step back. His body finds the pattern. His breathing coordinates with the movement. This is hard work, but it is not frantic work. It is steady work, sustainable work. He can maintain this pace for hours. The bed is 12 feet long and 4 feet wide. Working across the width, Brother Thomas moves down the length, spadeful by spadeful. After 3 feet, he pauses to rest, standing upright, pressing his hands against his lower back, stretching. Then he continues. 3 more feet, another rest, and so on until he reaches the end of the bed. He stands at the far end and looks back at what he has accomplished. The bed looks completely different now. Where before it was flat and smooth, now it is rough and uneven, great clods of earth lying at various angles. This is correct. He will smooth it later, when the immediate digging is done. For now, rough is good. Rough exposes more surface area to the air and light, allows the soil to breathe, helps it dry and warm. He moves to the next bed and begins again. Dig, turn, shake, step back. The sun climbs higher, the morning grows warmer. Brother Thomas's habit is soon damp with sweat, despite the cool air. This is vigorous work. It demands everything his body can give. He works through the morning, breaking only for terce, the mid-morning prayer. After the brief prayer service, he returns immediately to the garden. There is so much to do, and the season will not wait. He digs through another 2 beds before the midday meal, his shoulders burning with the effort, his hands cramping on the spade handle. At the midday meal, the other monks notice his exhaustion. One of the younger brothers asks if he needs help. Brother Thomas considers this. Pride would say no, that he can manage alone, that this is his responsibility. But wisdom says otherwise. The work is too much for one man, especially a man of 43 years. He nods. Tomorrow, he says quietly, if you can be spared from other duties, the digging must be finished before the planting can begin. The young monk nods eagerly. He is perhaps 18 years old, strong and energetic, and Brother Thomas remembers being that age, though it seems a lifetime ago now. The energy of youth, the body that recovers quickly. He no longer has these advantages, but he has something else, experience. He knows how to pace himself. He knows when to push and when to rest. He knows that gardening is not a sprint, but a marathon, and surviving the marathon requires strategy. That afternoon, Brother Thomas does not dig. Instead, he performs lighter tasks. The beds that were dug yesterday and the day before need raking smooth. He takes his rake, a tool with iron tines, and begins working over the rough surface. The rake breaks up the large clods, pulverizes the soil, creates a fine tilth. This is satisfying work. Rough earth becomes smooth, chaos becomes order. As he rakes, he also removes stones. No matter how carefully a garden is tended, stones appear. They work their way to the surface through the freeze-thaw cycles of winter. Brother Thomas has long ago given up trying to understand where they all come from. He simply accepts that stones are a fact of life and removes them as they appear. He tosses them onto the paths, where they will be collected later and added to the path's gravel. By late afternoon, 3 beds are raked smooth and ready. They lie dark and level, perfect. Brother Thomas looks at them with satisfaction. These beds will receive the first plantings. Tomorrow or the next day, if the weather cooperates, the peas will go in. Peas. The traditional first planting of spring. Hardy, tolerant of cold, quick to germinate. Peas have been the opening act of the garden year for as long as Brother Thomas has been gardening, and probably for generations before that. They are reliable, they are forgiving, and they are delicious. The first truly fresh vegetable after winter's stored roots and cabbages. He goes to the seed storage and retrieves the jar of pea seeds. The seeds are wrinkled and pale green, each one no bigger than the first joint of his little finger. He counts out enough for 3 12-foot rows, plus a few extra to account for seeds that will not germinate. Then he returns the jar to storage and carries his seeds to the garden. The bed is ready. Now he must create drills, the shallow furrows where the seeds will be planted. He takes a hoe and draws it along the bed, creating a straight line about an inch deep. This requires a steady hand and a good eye. The line must be straight, not for aesthetic reasons, but for practical ones. Straight rows are easier to weed, easier to water, easier to harvest from. He makes 3 drills across the bed, spacing them about 15 inches apart. Then he takes the peas and begins dropping them in. 1 every 3 inches, pressed gently into the soil at the bottom of the drill. His hands work quickly but carefully. Each pea matters. Each one is a potential plant. When all 3 drills are seeded, he uses the back of the rake to pull soil over them, covering them to about an inch deep. Then he presses the soil down gently but firmly with the flat of the rake. This ensures good contact between seed and oil, which aids germination. Finally, he takes stakes and pushes them into the ground at intervals along the rows. Later, when the peas germinate and begin to grow, he will tie strings between these stakes, creating supports for the climbing plants. But that is weeks away. For now, the bed looks bare, just dark soil and wooden stakes. The peas are buried, invisible, beginning their mysterious transformation in the darkness. Brother Thomas stands and looks at what he has done. The first planting of the year. It is a small thing really, 3 rows of peas. But it is also huge. It is the beginning. It is the turning of the cycle. It is the commitment to this year's garden, this year's growth, this year's harvest. He feels a flutter of something in his chest. Not excitement exactly. He is too experienced, has seen too many seasons to get excited about something as simple as planting peas. But anticipation. Yes, a quiet anticipation. The garden is waking. And with it, something in him wakes too. The next day, the young monk appears in the garden after breakfast, ready to help. Brother Thomas shows him how to dig, how to angle the spade, how to turn the earth. The young monk is strong but awkward at first, unused to this particular kind of labor. His technique is crude. He uses too much force, exhausts himself too quickly. But Brother Thomas does not criticize. He simply works alongside him, demonstrating through action rather than words. By mid-morning, the young monk has found a rhythm. His movements become more economical. He paces himself better. And Brother Thomas notes this with approval. The body learns, if given the chance, and not pushed beyond its limits. Together, they accomplish more than Brother Thomas could alone. 2 more beds are dug by midday. After the meal, they dig 2 more. By vespers, 6 beds are completed, raked smooth, ready for planting. Brother Thomas thanks the young monk, who grins, pleased to have been useful. "I will return tomorrow," the monk says. "If you wish." "I would be grateful," Brother Thomas replies. They work together for the rest of the week, the old gardener and the young monk. Beds are dug, raked, prepared. And as soon as each bed is ready, Brother Thomas plants it. Onion sets go in, tiny bulbs pushed into the soil, 1 every 6 inches, in rows 1 foot apart. broad beans are planted. Large seeds the size of thumbnails, pushed 2 inches deep. More peas. The planting continues, urgent now, driven by the knowledge that the season is short and there is much to do. By the end of March, half the beds are planted. The other half wait, dug and ready, for crops that require warmer soil. But these first plantings are in. Peas, beans, onions, the foundation crops. The garden has begun its year. And each evening, before returning to the monastery for Compline, Brother Thomas walks the beds slowly, looking at the freshly planted earth. Nothing is visible yet. The seeds are still underground, still beginning their transformation. But he knows they are there. He knows they are swelling, cracking open, sending out roots and shoots. He knows that in a week, perhaps 2, tiny green threads will break through the surface. This is faith, he thinks. Not the faith of believing in things unseen, though that too, but the faith of trusting in processes. The faith that seeds will become plants, that work will yield harvest, that the cycle will continue. This is the faith that sustains a gardener through cold March mornings and aching backs and uncertain weather. He plants the seeds, and he believes they will grow. And usually, through grace and good management and the cooperation of weather, they do. This is March, the month of first plantings, the month of faith made visible in turned earth and buried seeds, the month when the garden's year truly begins. April is transformation. Literally, visibly, the garden changes from day to day. Where at the beginning of the month there is only bare soil and wooden stakes, by month's end there are rows of green plants, small but vigorous, reaching toward the light. Brother Thomas watches this transformation with the same quiet wonder he feels every spring, no matter how many springs he has witnessed. The first emergence is the peas. Exactly 9 days after planting, Brother Thomas notices tiny green threads breaking through the soil. At first, he thinks it might be weeds. Chickweed germinates quickly and can fool an inexperienced gardener. But no, these are in the right places, following the lines of his drills. These are peas. The following day, more appear, and the day after that, more still. By the end of the second week after planting, the entire row is up. A line of small green plants, each one sending out its first true leaves. They are perhaps an inch tall, fragile looking, but surprisingly resilient. A light frost will not kill them. Cold rain will not kill them. They are adapted for this time of year, for the uncertain weather of early spring. Brother Thomas watches them with the attentiveness of a parent watching a child. He checks them each morning. Are they growing? Are they healthy? Is anything eating them? He looks for the telltale signs of problems. Slug damage would show as holes in the leaves. Damping off disease would show as seedlings that fall over, their stems rotted at soil level. But so far, all is well. The peas are growing, the onions are slower to show themselves. The sets were not seeds, but tiny bulbs, and they must first establish roots before producing leaves. But by mid-April, each set has sent up a single green shoot, thin as a pencil lead, reaching upward. Thus, shoots will thicken and multiply over the coming months. By summer's end, each tiny set will have become a full onion, round and firm, with papery golden skin. The broad beans germinate with impressive speed. These are large seeds with substantial food reserves, and they grow rapidly. Within a week of planting, they have pushed through the soil. Within 2 weeks, they are 3 inches tall, their leaves a distinctive blue-green, their stems thick and succulent. Brother Thomas inspects them carefully. Broad beans are magnets for aphids, but it is still too early in the season for those pests. They will come later in May, when the plants are flowering. For now, the beans grow unmolested. But April brings new work as well as new growth. The emerging seedlings are not the only things breaking through the soil. Weeds germinate too. Many, many weeds. Brother Thomas has learned that for every vegetable seedling that appears, at least 10 weed seedlings appear alongside it. Chickweed, shepherd's purse, groundsel, hairy bittercress, dandelions, dock. The catalogue of weeds is long and familiar. Weeding becomes a daily task. Brother Thomas takes his hoe each morning and walks the planted beds slowly, blades scraping just below the soil surface, slicing off weed seedlings before they can establish. This is delicate work. The vegetable plants are still small, easily damaged. The hoe must pass close to them, but not too close. It is a matter of precision, of careful attention, of experience. The hoeing is meditative. His body knows what to do. Push the hoe forward, blade parallel to the soil. Cut the weeds. Pull back. Step forward. Repeat. The motion becomes automatic. His mind is free to wander, to pray, to simply be present in the moment. The scrape of the blade on soil, the slight resistance as it slices through a weed stem, the small pile of uprooted weeds left to wilt in the sun. This is his morning meditation, more than any formal prayer. But hoeing is only one part of the weed control. Some weeds are too large to hoe or grow too close to the vegetables. These must be hand-pulled. Brother Thomas goes through the beds on his knees, fingers searching for weeds among the crops. He pulls carefully, getting the entire root. A weed pulled without its root will simply regrow. He works slowly, methodically, missing nothing. This is back-breaking work. Hours on his knees, bent over, hands in the soil. His knees ache. His back protests. But it is necessary. A bed left unweeded for even a week can become overrun. The weeds will crowd out the vegetables, steal their water and nutrients, shade them from the sun. Weeding is not optional. It is the price of a productive garden. By mid-April, Brother Thomas faces a new task, thinning. The carrots and beets, sown directly in the soil in late March, have germinated thickly. This is intentional. Small seeds are difficult to space precisely, so he sowed them more thickly than needed, with the intention of thinning later. Now, later has arrived. The carrot seedlings are tiny, just thread-like stems with a few feathery leaves. They are growing 2 or 3 to an inch, far too crowded. Brother Thomas goes through the rows carefully, pulling out the excess seedlings, leaving one plant every inch or so. The thin seedlings are so small as to be nearly worthless, but he saves them anyway, taking them to the kitchen where they add a slight carrot flavor to the evening soup. The beets are thinned similarly, though they are easier to work with. Beet seeds are actually clusters of seeds, and each cluster produces multiple seedlings. These grow in tight bunches. Brother Thomas thins them to 1 plant per bunch, then spaces the bunches 3 inches apart. The thinned seedlings are larger than the carrot thinnings, large enough to be useful. The greens, when boiled, are perfectly edible and nutritious. This thinning is emotionally difficult in a way that Brother Thomas finds hard to explain to others. He has grown these plants from seeds. He has watered them, weeded around them, watched them emerge. And now he is pulling most of them out, discarding them, destroying them before they have a chance to mature. It feels wasteful. It feels wrong. But intellectually, he knows it is necessary. The plants that remain will be stronger, healthier, more productive because they have adequate space. Overcrowding helps no one. As April progresses, the weather grows warmer. Slowly, uncertainly, but warming nonetheless. The soil temperature rises. Brother Thomas tests this by the old method. He plunges his hand into the soil first thing in the morning. If it feels cool but not cold, soil temperature is probably around 50 degrees, adequate for many crops. If it feels barely cool, more like the temperature of a cellar, it is likely in the 60s, warm enough for almost anything. By the third week of April, the soil has reached that barely cool stage. The time has come for the second wave of planting. The beds that were prepared but left unplanted in March now receive their crops. Lettuce goes in, tiny seeds sown thinly in shallow drills. Brother Thomas plants them in short rows, 1 row per week, creating succession. This way, lettuce will mature gradually through the spring and early summer, not all at once. He has made the mistake of planting everything simultaneously in his early years, and the result was a glut followed by a gap. Now he plants small amounts repeatedly, ensuring continuous supply. Radishes are sown between the rows of slower growing crops. Radishes mature quickly, in just 4 weeks, and they will be harvested long before the other crops need their space. This intercropping, fitting fast-growing crops between slower ones, maximizes the garden's productivity. Turnips go in, their seeds round and dark. Parsnips, their seeds flat and papery. More carrots in different beds for succession. Cabbage seedlings, started in the cold frame 6 weeks ago, are transplanted to their permanent bed. Brother Thomas handles each seedling carefully, trying not to disturb the roots, watering them in thoroughly after planting. The herb garden demands attention too. The perennial herbs are growing actively now, sending up new shoots. Brother Thomas divides the ones that have grown too large. Mint is particularly aggressive, spreading far beyond its intended space. He digs it out ruthlessly, removing most of the spreading roots, replanting only a small section. Even this small section will grow to fill the space by summer's end. Mint's vigor is both blessing and curse. Chives have formed dense clumps that need dividing. Brother Thomas digs them up, splits each clump into 4 or 5 smaller pieces, and replants these pieces. This rejuvenates the plants and creates extras that can be shared with other monastery gardens or given to the poor. New herbs are planted too. Basil, seeds started in pots in the cold frame, are transplanted to the herb garden. Basil is tender, intolerant of cold, so Brother Thomas waits until late April when he is certain the last frost has passed. The small plants look vulnerable in the open garden, but they will grow quickly once warm weather arrives. The fruit trees, which were bare sticks in winter, are now covered with blossoms. First the plums bloomed. In late March, their white flowers like snow against the dark branches. Now the apples are blooming, their flowers pink-tinged and sweetly fragrant. The whole garden smells of apple blossom. a scent that Brother Thomas associates powerfully with spring, with hope, with the promise of harvest months away. Bees visit these flowers constantly. The monastery's hives are active now, the bees emerging on warm days to forage. Brother Thomas watches them work, moving methodically from flower to flower, gathering nectar and pollen, and in the process, pollinating. No bees, no apples, he knows this. He is grateful for every bee he sees. But April is not without its challenges. A cold snap in the middle of the month brings frost one night, and Brother Thomas rushes to cover the bean plants with sacking. The peas can tolerate frost, but the beans are more vulnerable. He works by moonlight, draping cloth over the young plants, weighing the cloth down with stones so the wind will not blow it away. The next morning the frost is heavy, and the covered plants are saved. The uncovered beans show damage, blackened leaves, stunted growth, but they recover. Rain comes too, heavy rain that lasts for 2 days. The paths turn muddy. The beds, well drained, but not impervious to saturation, become waterlogged. Brother Thomas can do nothing but wait. Working wet soil would damage it. So he waits, and watches, and hopes the rain will end before the seedlings rot in the wet earth. When the rain finally stops, the sun emerges, and the garden steams as it dries. The plants, which looked bedraggled during the downpour, perk up. They are growing visibly now. He can see the difference from one day to the next. Peas adding new leaves, beans growing taller, onion shoots thickening. The garden is alive, truly alive, in a way that it was not even 2 weeks ago. By the end of April, the garden has been transformed. Every bed has something growing. The early plantings are well established. The later plantings are emerging. The fruit trees are dropping their petals, revealing tiny forming fruits behind where the flowers were. The herb garden is lush with new growth. Brother Thomas walks the paths in the evening light, after Vespers, before Compline. The sun is setting later now, and there is time for this evening inspection, this quiet moment of assessment and appreciation. The work has been hard. The challenges have been real. But the garden is responding. It is growing. It is fulfilling its purpose. This is April, the month of rapid growth, the month of weeding and thinning and planting, the month when the garden changes from a place of potential to a place of realization. The seeds are becoming plants. The work is becoming harvest. The cycle is turning, as it always does, reliable and generous and true. May arrives with warmth and abundance. The hesitancy of April is gone. Spring is no longer a promise, but a reality. The days are genuinely warm now, the sun climbing high, the air soft and gentle. Night frosts are no longer a concern. The growing season is fully underway, and the garden responds with explosive growth. Everything seems to double in size from 1 week to the next. The peas, which were small plants in April, are now knee-high and climbing their strings. Each plant sends out delicate tendrils that wave in the air until they encounter a string, then coil around it, pulling the plant upward. Brother Thomas Bintoms adds more strings as needed, creating a network of support. Within weeks, these plants will be taller than he is, covered with white flowers that smell sweet on a warm afternoon. The broad beans are flowering too, their blooms distinctive. White petals with a splash of black in the center. Bees visit them constantly, Brother Thomas watches this pollination with satisfaction. Good pollination means good pod set, means abundant harvest. Everything is connected. The bees, the flowers, the eventual beans, all part of one seamless system. But May also brings pests. The warmth that encourages plant growth also encourages insect activity. Aphids appear on the growing tips of the broad beans, small green insects that cluster densely, sucking sap, weakening the plants. Brother Thomas has been expecting them. They come every year. He has his response ready. First, he pinches off the growing tips of the beans. This serves two purposes. It removes many of the aphids, and it encourages the plants to focus their energy on pod production rather than continued upward growth. The pinched tips are not wasted. When boiled, they are a delicacy, slightly bitter but pleasant. The kitchen is happy to receive them. For the remaining aphids, Brother Thomas has a simple solution: water. A strong spray of water from his watering can knocks the aphids off the plants. Most will not return, some will be eaten by ground beetles and other beneficial insects. The few that do manage to return can be dealt with later. The key is to keep the infestation from becoming overwhelming. He checks the beans daily now, looking for aphids. When he finds them, he sprays. This vigilance is essential. A day's delay, jiaozhai, can mean the difference between a minor problem and a serious infestation. But he is careful not to develop anxiety about it. Pests are a natural part of gardening. They cannot be eliminated, only managed. The goal is balance, not perfection. Other pests appear too. Cabbage white butterflies, pretty and destructive, float through the garden on delicate wings. They are looking for brassica plants, cabbages, kale, on which to lay their eggs. Each tiny yellow egg will hatch into a caterpillar that can devour a cabbage leaf in hours. Brother Thomas watches for these butterflies, and when he sees them, he walks to the cabbage bed and inspects the undersides of leaves. Sure enough, there are the eggs, small and yellowish white. He removes them carefully, crushing them between finger and thumb. This is tedious work, but effective. Catching the eggs before they hatch prevents the need to deal with caterpillars later. An ounce of prevention, as Brother Augustine used to say. Slugs emerge in the damp evenings. Brother Thomas sees their silvery trails on the paths in the morning. He knows they are eating his lettuce, nibbling holes in the tender leaves. At dusk, he goes into the garden with a small basket and handpicks them, lifting leaves to find slugs hiding beneath, checking under boards and pots where they shelter during the day. The slugs go onto the compost heap, where they can live without damaging crops. This gentle approach to pest control is dictated by the monastery's rule. All life is God's creation and should be respected. Brother Thomas cannot kill, but he can relocate, discourage, interrupt life cycles. It is more labor-intensive than simply using poisons, but poisons are expensive anyway, and often harm beneficial creatures along with pests. His methods, though slower, are sustainable and align with his vows. May is also the month of transplanting. The seedlings started in the cold frame in March are now sturdy plants, ready for the garden. Cabbages go out, planted in rows, each plant given adequate space to form a head. Brother Thomas plants them slightly deeper than they grew in their pots, burying the stem up to the first leaves. This encourages a stronger root system and makes the plants more stable. After planting each cabbage, he waters it thoroughly. The water settles the soil around the roots and gives the plant a good start. For the first few days, the transplanted cabbages look wilted and stressed. This is normal. They are adjusting to their new conditions. But within a week, they perk up, sending out new leaves, establishing themselves. Cucumber plants are transplanted too, but with more care. Cucumbers hate root disturbance. Brother Thomas handles them gently, keeping the root ball intact, setting them into prepared mounds of enriched soil. He waters them carefully, making sure moisture reaches the roots without washing away soil. The lettuce planted in April is ready to harvest now. Brother Thomas goes through the bed in the early morning, selecting heads that have formed nicely. He cuts them at the base with a sharp knife, leaving the roots in the ground. The cut heads go into his basket, fresh and crisp, beaded with dew. The kitchen will wash them, dress them with oil and vinegar, serve them with the midday meal. Fresh lettuce after winter's cooked vegetables is a blessing. But Brother Thomas does not harvest all the lettuce at once. He takes only what is needed for a day or two, leaving the rest to continue growing. This extends the harvest over several weeks. When these plants eventually bolt, sending up flower stalks and becoming bitter, he will pull them and plant more in their place. Succession planting ensures a continuous supply. The herbs are at their peak now. Brother Thomas harvests regularly, cutting stems for the kitchen and the infirmary. The infirmarian comes twice a week now, asking for this or that. Chamomile for a brother with digestive troubles. Lavender for the linen closets. Rosemary for a tonic. Mint for tea. Brother Thomas cuts generously, but not greedily, always leaving enough foliage for the plant to recover quickly. He also begins the serious work of drying herbs for winter storage. Lavender is cut just as the buds are opening. He gathers the stems into bunches, ties them with twine, and hangs them upside down in the drying shed. Within a few weeks, they will be completely dry, and the buds can be stripped off and stored in sealed jars. Mint is cut back hard. He takes about a third of the stems from each plant, cutting them at ground level. This encourages bushy growth and prevents the plants from becoming leggy. The cut stems are tied in loose bunches and hung to dry. Once dry, the leaves are stripped from the stems and crumbled, then stored. This drying work continues all through May and into June. The drying shed gradually fills with hanging bundles. The scent, when Brother Thomas opens the door, is overwhelming. A mix of lavender and mint and chamomile and a dozen other herbs. It is the smell of the garden, concentrated, preserved, made available for seasons when these plants will not be growing. The fruit trees require attention in May too. The tiny fruits that form behind the blossoms are growing now, swelling perceptibly from one day to the next. But there are too many of them. Every blossom that was pollinated has set a fruit, and the trees cannot support them all. If left alone, they will produce hundreds of tiny apples instead of dozens of good-sized ones. Brother Thomas thins the fruit. It feels wrong removing perfectly good baby apples, but he knows it is necessary. He goes through each tree systematically, removing the smallest fruits from each cluster, leaving only one or two. The thinned fruits fall to the ground. They are too small to be useful, but they will decompose and return nutrients to the soil. After thinning, the remaining fruits have room to grow. Over the coming months, they will swell to full size. Without thinning, the tree would exhaust itself trying to ripen too many fruits, and all would be small and inferior. The vegetable beds require constant attention now. Weeding is a daily task. The hoe is in Brother Thomas's hands every morning, scraping between rows, cutting off weeds before they can establish. When he finishes the last bed, it is time to start again at the first bed, where new weeds have germinated. The cycle never ends. But there are rewards too. The early radishes are ready, their roots swollen and crisp. The first peas are forming pods. The onions are thick and green. Everything is growing, everything is healthy, everything is responding to his care. Water becomes more critical in May. April's rains are less frequent now. The soil dries out more quickly in the warm sun. Brother Thomas waters regularly, drawing bucket after bucket from the well, carrying them to the beds, pouring water at the base of the plants. This is hard work. Water is heavy, his shoulders ache. But it is necessary. He waters in the early morning or late evening, never at midday. Midday watering wastes water through evaporation and can burn leaves if water droplets focus sunlight like tiny lenses. Morning watering is best. It gives plants moisture to see them through the hot day. And any water that splashes on leaves will dry quickly, reducing disease risk. By the end of May, the garden is unrecognizable compared to its January state. Every bed is full of growing plants. The paths are lined with green. The fruit trees are leafy, their branches bending under the weight of developing fruit. The herb garden is a tapestry of different textures and shades of green. The whole space is alive, vigorous, productive. Brother Thomas walks through it in the long evening light, after the day's work is done, after Vespers, before the final prayer of a compline. He is tired. His body aches from the day's labor. But there is deep satisfaction in this tiredness. The garden is doing what it should. It is growing. It is producing. And he has facilitated this through his work, his attention, his care. This is May, the month of growth and abundance, the month of first harvests and ongoing challenges, the month when the garden truly comes alive, when all the preparation of winter and spring pays off in tangible, visible, delicious results, the month when Brother Thomas remembers why he loves this work, despite its hardships. Because the garden is generous. It gives so much more than seems possible from small seeds and careful labor. And in its generosity, there is grace.